Senator James Wilson sat across from Senator Maria Thompson, the two of them locked in a heated debate about reparations for Black Americans. Wilson, a white senator, argued that reparations were unnecessary and would only create more division in the country.
Senator Thompson, I understand your desire to see reparations for Black Americans, but let's be real here. How can we possibly determine who deserves reparations and who doesn't? How far back do we go? Should we give reparations to the descendants of slaves or just those who were directly impacted? It's a logistical nightmare.
Thompson, a black senator, leaned forward in her chair.
Senator Wilson, you're missing the point. Black Americans have suffered for centuries because of slavery and systemic racism. Reparations are not about determining who deserves what, but about acknowledging the harm that has been done and trying to make it right.
Wilson scoffed.
Make it right? How can we possibly make it right? Slavery happened over 150 years ago. None of us alive today had anything to do with it. And let's not forget that there are plenty of white Americans who have also faced discrimination and hardship. Should we be giving them reparations too?
Thompson shook her head.
Senator Wilson, you're missing the point again. Black Americans have never had the same opportunities as white Americans. We've been systematically excluded from wealth, education, and job opportunities. Reparations are about trying to level the playing field.
Wilson leaned back in his chair.
But what about personal responsibility? What about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps? That's what I did. I came from a poor family, but I worked hard and made something of myself. Why can't Black Americans do the same?
Thompson raised an eyebrow.
Senator Wilson, do you really believe that Black Americans haven't been working hard? We've been working twice as hard to get half as far. And let's not forget all the times the government has given white Americans government aid or welfare. The Homestead Act, the GI Bill, the New Deal programs, the Federal Housing Administration, the Small Business Administration. All of these programs disproportionately helped white Americans while leaving Black Americans behind.
The two senators glared at each other across the table, their argument at an impasse. The tension in the room was palpable as they both realized that they were unlikely to change each other's minds. The meeting ended with a terse exchange of pleasantries, but both senators knew that the debate was far from over. What's good, Trap History family? It's your boy, the Project Professor, aka Hood Historian. Today we're diving into the top 5 times white Americans received government aid or welfare while African Americans were left out in the cold. Let's get into it. Number 5, the Homestead Act of 1862. This federal law granted land to settlers in the western United States, but African Americans were excluded from eligibility. That's right, even though black people were promised 40 acres and a mule, they were denied land ownership and the benefits that came with it. Talk about a raw deal. Number 4, the GI Bill of Rights. Passed in 1944, this bill provided benefits to veterans of World War II, including education, housing, and employment assistance. Sounds great, right? But African American veterans were often denied access to these benefits due to discriminatory practices like redlining and racial segregation. The irony? These brave men and women fought for the very freedoms they were denied. Number 3, New Deal programs. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's response to the Great Depression in the 1930s included the National Recovery Administration and the Agricultural Adjustment Administration. But many of these programs discriminated against African Americans and other minorities. So, while the country was on the upswing, black folks were left behind. Number 2, the Federal Housing Administration. Established in 1934, the FHA provided mortgage insurance and promoted homeownership. But their policies, including redlining and racially restrictive covenants, prevented many African Americans from obtaining home loans and owning property. So, while white Americans built wealth through homeownership, black Americans were locked out. And the number 1 time white Americans received government aid or welfare while African Americans were denied? Drumroll, please. Number 1, the Small Business Administration. Established in 1953, the SBA was designed to assist small businesses in obtaining loans and other forms of support. But their policies and practices have been criticized for disproportionately favoring white-owned businesses over minority-owned businesses, including those owned by African Americans. So, while white business owners got a boost, black entrepreneurs were left to fend for themselves. And there it is, Trap History fam. The top 5 times white Americans got government aid or welfare while African Americans were left behind. Stay woke, stay curious, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.